Have you ever wondered why you keep falling into the same patterns? Even after years of therapy, self-reflection, or reading every self-help book you can find? What if the real obstacle isn't a lack of insight, but the subconscious beliefs and emotional imprints that quietly shape how you think, feel, and relate to others? Welcome to Centered, Becoming Whole in a Chaotic World. This is a podcast about orientation, integration, and the lifelong work of becoming whole. I am your host, Dr. Jeff Armstrong, a PhD exercise physiologist with a deep interest in the intersection of the physical and the spiritual. My guest is Rochelle L. Cook, a clinical hypnotherapist, author, and co-founder of Joymind. For more than 20 years, Rochelle has helped people move beyond surface-level awareness to address the subconscious patterns that often keep them stuck in cycles of unhealthy relationships, self-criticism, and emotional pain. Together, we'll explore why lasting transformation requires more than insight, how the subconscious influences our daily lives, and what it means to heal from the inside out in the ongoing journey toward becoming whole. Well, Rochelle, welcome to Centered. This is a podcast where we just really kind of dive into understanding what it means to move from being more fragmented to being more oriented. And so your background just sets itself up for a perfect conversation today. So I'd like to just kind of welcome you. And before we kind of get into your work, ask you to just kind of take us back a moment to the point in your life where you felt like things began to clarify for you and when you started to see what really mattered.
That's a very good question.
I start off tough.
Okay. Thank you for that question. You know, it's interesting because it keeps evolving. You know, I remember the first time it happened was when I went and studied spiritual psychology. You know, that's where my master's is in. I love spiritual psychology. I think it's East meets West. And you have to start looking at your own self, which is always fun, you know. We like looking at ourselves. And I had already done this kind of work because of my mom. She's very spiritual and that's who she is, but not to that level. So when I started studying that work, it made me dive into the inner child and to have compassion for the inner child. And that is when I started waking up to, And then, you know, I started studying a lot of Buddhism. And I started waking up to, attachments create suffering and they're illusions, and that you can learn to control your mind and how you think. Not all the time, but a lot of times. And then lucky me, ended up having to undergo brain surgery, which was extremely serious, off the charts. And it took me 8 years of back and forth to the hospitals and being sick all the time and learning to walk again and developing PPPD, where your world is swaying. It was horrific. I would never want to go through that again. But I learned so much about beauty because I couldn't move my head for many years. So I would sit, I'm looking at a painting right now. I'd lie on that couch and I would look at this painting and I could tell you more about that painting than the artist that painted it. And I learned to take like a simple pleasure, slow things down and be simple, and just look at things and see things through the eyes of a child, curiosity. Or I would look at the birds. I can tell you where the birds go across the street. I know all of this stuff. But it was like so amazing to just be able to be present and mindful in the here and now and not let your mind go into that catastrophic, like the tornado, which we humans tend to do. So that woke me up to, well, at least I'm alive to learn more lessons, which, you know, wasn't easy. So I'm not going to say it was a pleasant experience. But the biggest one was that I was alive for my daughter. And I kept remembering the book I read by Man's Search for Meaning, which is one of the most important books in the world to read. And I would lie on this couch with the air conditioning coming down on this down-filled couch. And I would say to myself, here you are thinking you may not make it and you can't do it. And what if you were Dr. Viktor Frankl on plywood with 5 other people, and in the winter, on each side, somebody may have frozen to death, and if I was this sick, they'd put me in the gas chamber or whatever they were going to do with me? If he can do that, I can do this. Because I need to stay alive for my child. Even if I don't get better, I will find a way to not attach to the illusion that I have to be miserable. I'm not my pain and suffering, because I'm here for my child, and that means more to me, who incidentally is 29 years old now. But at the time, she was just turned 18. Crazy. And then it kept going. Then I had the lung surgery less than a year ago, lung cancer. I don't smoke. I had the gene. So I was lucky. See, there again, I thank God I had practiced and learned these skills, because of course it's scary. It's not a pleasant experience, especially when you're thinking you're going to die in the beginning. That's an experience. Don't like that one. But once I knew I wasn't going to die, and boy, that death experience taught me near death a lot. That was something I'm still wrestling with. But I only had to have 3 rounds of chemotherapy, 1 a month, which was horrible. But I kept thinking, well, look at these poor people that have to go every day. How do they do that? I'm lucky I don't have to do that. And then I had the lower left lobe of my lung completely removed. Well, at least they removed it, and I'm grateful. 27 lymph nodes, and I'm grateful that everything came back negative, nothing spread. So I'm lucky. And I kept thinking, I think my final end to, what would it be? I hate, it sounds so silly, but appreciating life, because it's hard to say that, because I always have. But to really gain this deep, I can't even believe I'm saying this, like a slap in the face. The slap in the face was knowing that I wasn't going to die. Because when I thought I was going to die, I remember holding on to my husband, crying, saying, please don't let them take me. And like, wait a minute, I have things to do. This is too soon. I was 62. This is like, I'm 63 now. It's like, but I don't have time, and I've got my daughter. And it was really a horrifying experience. But then because of my practice, I was able to focus in and out of acceptance and permanence. But then I would go back to the fear. And then I got lucky. I knew I wasn't going to die. So that gave me the strength to say, you know what? At least I'm alive. I can go through anything. At least I'm alive to see my daughter and help my clients, and I have my husband and my friends, and I'm grateful to meet people like you to get to do these types of things. Very grateful. So thank you. I humbly thank you. That, I think, I don't know what's going to happen in life. I'm very comfortable with uncertainty, though. Pema Children's work, Comfortable with Uncertainty, great book. And I am comfortable now because at least I'm alive, and we can do anything we want to do if we're alive. When you're dead, you can't do anything. Doesn't mean you won't want to start working around death and not be, you don't want to be afraid of it and you embrace it, but that's a whole different conversation. But that was where all these little milestones, and I really do believe that was the one. Because sometimes I'll walk around the house and I'm not having a good day because I'm still recovering, and I'll say, oh, better than being dead. Losing your hair, better than being dead. And boy, does it put things into perspective. I know my father was
like you. For a bad reason, but
you look good.
Yeah. Well, thanks. I try.
That's good.
I actually, I was recording something the other day, and it just dawned on me. It's like I'm seeing my dad's face.
Really?
Minus the hair. My dad had a little bit more hair than me, and he wore a hairpiece for years. But man, the eyes, the nose, the mouth, it's like, that's my dad. But it was a great moment because it was like, I really have grown over the years. I lost my dad a couple of years ago, but I really grew over the years to appreciate my parents for the good and the bad. And it's the same thing. You mentioned, appreciation for life, but then having an appreciation for life. I think a lot of us go through life. We feel like we have an appreciation for life, but then you get an appreciation for life.
Yeah.
And that's where I'm a bit on a crusade to change the spelling of gratitude to have 2 T's in the middle. So it's an attitude of gratitude.
I love that.
because we have to be more than just grateful. We have to be grateful.
I'll add to
And
that. And we get to.
yes, I like that. Yeah. And I have a friend, Andy Lozier, who a number of years ago, he was a wrestling coach on the East Coast and a school in Connecticut. And he decided he was going to raise money for his team by cycling from Connecticut to St. Louis, Missouri in a week to
Whoa.
raise money. And St. Louis was where
Wow.
the NCAAs were going to be held that year. And so figured it was like a 1,100 miles, 1,200 mile distance.
Wow.
And he said at one point he's like biking along and he's just alongside the road. His legs are killing him. He's just tired. He's hurting, and he's like, "Oh, I have to do this yet. I have to do this many more miles before I can kind of rest tonight." And he's like, "Wait a minute, no, you don't have to. You get to."
I love it.
And there are people out here who don't have any legs that would love to be in the pain that I'm in right now, to have been biking. And so you get to do this. And so he built a kind of a whole new career on going from have to get.
I so love that. I remember with brain surgery, because it went on a long time, there were just the smallest little thing people take for granted that almost killed me. It was really, really hard. That's why I did well with the cancer situation, because I had practice. I learned a lot.
Yeah.
But it's amazing how you can turn, again, the impossible into the possible, because we get to. And it's funny, because something you said, you look in the mirror and you see your dad. And I'm going to also add that to part of the aging. I'll look in the mirror and see my mom and my dad, the good and the bad. Mm-hmm. But it's really, isn't it interesting how when you see that, it makes you, sometimes you have that reaction of, oh. And then sometimes, I don't know about you, but you have the reaction of, no, I don't like this. So you have to change your thoughts around, wait a minute, let's go back and understand that everybody has their own curriculum. We're lucky we were loved. And that's life. It's impermanence. It's up and down. So we get to embrace all of it, because we wouldn't be who we are today if we hadn't been through what we had been through. But looking in that mirror, oh man, it really shines a light on things you like and you don't like. I don't know. Maybe we just shouldn't have that mirror. I don't know. I've been thinking about it.
No, I think the mirrors are great, because they really open us up to who we are. And you said, you mentioned about being loved. And it's like, we got to be grateful too when we're not loved, because it's that not being loved sometimes that teaches us how to love.
That's right.
And so we have to take all of the bad in our life and look for, how is this intended to become good for others? Mm-hmm. Because it's not about us. It's about, what are we doing for other people? How are we evolving spiritually?
I so agree. That's what, for spiritual psychology, it's definitely, there's spirituality there, combined with like Gestalt work and things like that. And the higher you go up the learning line, the ladder, the ego tries to bring you down because it doesn't want you to go up. But I remember my mentor would say, it used to drive me nuts when he would say that. Dr. Ronald Holnick, who's one of the founders of spiritual psychology, he and his wife, he would say, just go up, just go up, just go up. And I'm like, what do you mean just go up? He said, just go up. And then I got it. It was like, aha. Because everything we learn is up there. And you already know it. So when you go up, you're living in a higher realm of consciousness. And then you can maybe take a deep letting go breath and put your hand on your heart and say, I'm home. So you're right. The not good things in life are just opportunities to learn. And then, like, you are a light bearer, right? And you speak to people, and that, even if they don't know it, it's an energy they feel, and then they can pass that on to somebody. And then we want the whole world to be lit up with those candles, right? And they learn. And it's a beautiful thing. So whenever things go wrong, we get to, but what's the lesson behind it? So if we don't catastrophize it and we look at the lesson, and man, sometimes we just don't want any more lessons. It's enough. You got to be careful when you say that, because then you're going to get more. You know that story. But what's the lesson behind it? And then you learn from it. And I wrote a book, and in that book, I write the last chapter, the conclusion, From Grapes to Vinegar. And again, we wouldn't be who we are today if we hadn't been through what we had been through. So we should embrace it and be proud of it. And Dr. Frankl says suffering is noble, wear the badge of honor. It's crazy how life works, but we get to decide how are we going to live it? What are we going to do? And oh my God, I don't know if you've experienced this, but I remember sitting in this big, huge chair over there with the brain surgery. I was looking at this wall. I was right there. That wall's looking at me. I hear you, wall. And I had to make a decision. Am I going to really hold on to the spirituality stuff, or am I going to go back to my old thinking? It's easier, the old thinking. It's not easy when you're spiritual because you got to check yourself all the time.
Right.
Or learn not to check yourself and just be, right? Well, I did the spiritual thing, but I remember coming to that crossroads. Has that ever happened to you? To like, do I really want to embrace this? Because then I got to really keep going.
I think it happens more than I want to admit, but yes.
And I use the metaphor, pretend you're on a diving board. You would not jump off into the water with one foot. You got to go with both and trust the healing waters to catch you. So I don't know what kind of water do you want to jump into. You and I both know.
Yeah.
But it's not easy doing this. You got to be accountable. Yet it's rewarding.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that people really don't recognize is that it always is. And
it is.
So I want to ask you a question. I've not heard of spiritual psychology before. And I've taught at the college level. We don't have any programs in spiritual psychology at Western Oregon where I taught, or Hope College, which was a Christian college. You think it might have had a little bit more of a spiritual psychology department, or Eastern Michigan. But what is it exactly, and how is it different from like your traditional psychology programs?
So spiritual psychology is now being taught at many, like when you become a psychologist or a therapist, they have now introduced spiritual psychology. It's East meets West. So you learn psychology, which is the study of the mind. So like Gestalt, Carl Rogers, Freud, Jung, all that kind of stuff, right? You learn how the mind works, and what modality do you want to use to help that person bring forward what they need to work with, right? Like Gestalt. I love Gestalt. Gestalt work is where Fritz Perls work. If you're talking to me and you're anxious, I'm going to have, there's a whole system to it. But basically I would say, well, what does anxiety have to say? Not you. And people always say, well, and I'm like, no, not you. What does anxiety have to say? And then anxiety starts speaking. Then the person starts speaking. And then the person figures it out for themselves, because you're letting the voice speak. That's a psychological modality. Spirituality is where we believe that the soul comes in to have a human experience, and every upset is an opportunity for growth. I'm upset because not anybody else. The last of the human freedoms any man can take away from you is how you choose to think. It has nothing to do with anybody. It's all you. And it is about raising your level of consciousness. So I'll give you an example. So we had to do an assignment, which was like for a year. It was a 2-year program, master's program. It was brutal. It's crazy what they made us do and how many books we had to read, and you as a professor would be shocked. So we had to write out, in a year, where do we want to be? It could be anything. So I said, my family and I live by the beach. We're going to live in Topanga Canyon, the mountains. But what they do is they have you write it out in detail, because what they're doing is, spiritually, but it's psychological too, right? They want you to be able to see what you want. They want to prove to you that your mind is strong enough that if you stop making up excuses, which is based on we adults become what we learned as children, right? Why we can't do something. And hey, if you want me to walk to the moon, I'm probably going to say I can't do that, right? But you have to write down something you believe is achievable, and you're going to do it. So you have to write out this entire dissertation basically on it. And I remember I went up to my reader and I said, I'm concerned that this may not happen. I don't know if financially we could do it, yada, yada, yada. And she looked at me and I said, what happens if I need to change, what I want to manifest, right? And she said, then we'll fail you. And I just looked at her like, with all the money I'm spending and the time you're going to fail me for this? Like, what kind of school is this? And she said, Rochelle, you don't get it. If you say you're going to do something, you're going to do it. And if you're not, it means that you're not applying the principles of what spiritual psychology is. Beliefs edit experience. You're going up the ladder of spirituality and your ego wants to pull you down. It doesn't want you to think you can do anything. Raise your level of consciousness and you can. And I'm careful when I say anything, right? But for you to sit here and doubt this, what I want to know is, where are these doubts coming from? And what modality are you going to use from a psychological perspective to overcome it? Where is this thinking coming from? Where did you learn you're not good enough and you're not capable? Where did you learn these, people call them limiting beliefs, right? But psychologically, what does that mean and where did it come from? Does that answer the question? So spirituality is raising your level of consciousness, and the psychology part is the study of the mind.
I love it. And so, one of the themes of this podcast is fragmentation. And so obviously you deal a lot with that in your area. Where do you see people becoming most divided or disoriented today?
So I'll start out by saying we adults become what we learned as children. And we believe in our old story and it projects itself into our life. So I see a lot of anxiety, relationships. That's what I wrote my book about. It's, relationships can be our knight in shining armor, our prince or our princess, or they can kill us. They can absolutely destroy us. I see a lot of that and a lot of trauma. And when I say relationships, it can be a love relationship. It can be a relation. It's usually around love because everybody wants to be loved. Or anxiety, I'm afraid because I learned to be afraid. And what I'm seeing is people are so busy living in the past and projecting it into the future, they can't even see what's happening now. And all of that doesn't exist. And it's really a problem because people are stuck in their story. I see it no matter what it is. It's all about the story and they can't get out of it. Well, eventually they do using, hypnotherapy and spiritual psychology, but it's a problem. It's a problem. It's a program. They're programmed and it's like a robot. It's just what they believe. And it's so interesting to me how sometimes there are so many people that are so blind to it that they just live the rest of their life like that and wonder why they're not happy. I'm sure you've seen that.
Yeah, I have. And as you're telling that, I'm thinking of the old records. I'm 63 as well as you. So,
hello.
We go back to the same era of, record players and 8-tracks and cassettes, long before digital music and downloading, and nobody even seeing a CD anymore. But when a record would get like a little scratch and it would tend to like skip over that same spot and just keeps making that irritating sound, just playing at the same spot. And sometimes all it takes is just to move that needle just a little bit forward and then it starts playing normally again. And that sounds like that's kind of where we get. We let ourselves get into that skipping mode and just playing the same horrible backstories over and over again, when all it takes is just push yourself out of it. Just take the next step forward. Look at that. What am I to gain from the past and move forward? Stop blaming the past and just move forward.
Yeah, I agree. I teach to understand the past You don't make it right or wrong. You understand maybe, if your parents were abusive, or one of them, whomever, no, it's not acceptable. But it's absolutely not acceptable.
Yeah.
But why did they do it? And then what you do is you end up having, I always say, have compassion for not ignorance, not being bad. So they don't know something, ignorance and suffering, and pray for peace. Because it comes from you, not them. And why do you think they did that? I wonder what their parents were like, and their parents, and their parents, or whomever it was that created your parents to think this way, so they harmed you, right? And when you understand that, I'm careful when I use the word forgiveness. You're not saying it's right. But when you look at behavior, here we go, psychology, and you understand why, then it's easier to say, oh, I see, what have I learned from it? And it had nothing to do with me. Children are innocent, and I believe children are victims. There's nothing they can do. They had nothing to do with it. Then they understand it, and then it's easier to move forward and be so grateful that you are the opposite and take those lessons you learned, especially if you're a parent. Usually you're a better parent because you know how not to be. Right. And I love that. And I always say to people, because sometimes they just don't know because they've been in it for so long, they're programmed. So if they just take one little step at a time, we say the light's at the end of the tunnel, even though you can't see it, trust that it's there, and take one little step at a time, and you will get there. And I my big thing is hypnotherapy. I'm a clinical therapist. So everything lives in the subconscious. The inner child lives in the subconscious. Everything we know. So when we start changing the way you think at that subconscious level, you just become a new person, and you're elevating your level of consciousness because you're leaving the trauma behind, no matter what kind of trauma it is, a lot of relationship stuff. And you learn that trauma doesn't have to harden your heart. It can soften your heart, and you love yourself as a human and say, you know what? Yeah, you went through a lot, and it's okay. You can rest and go do what you want to do. I love you unconditionally. And the lessons were hard, but I guess we had to learn them. And now it's okay to be in beauty. I get that a lot too. Why I don't get to live in this great world that I'm in and see beauty because look what's happening around the world. Or look what happened to my family. So if it happened to them, why should I live well? And I say to them, but don't look a gift horse in the mouth. If life said that I want you to come here and live a nice life, why would you tell life it's wrong? Why don't you say I get to and use it to help other people?
I like that.
Yeah.
So one of the things that has kind of evolved in my teaching and just my thought patterns over the years is it started with what I call well-centered fitness. When I was grad school, I teach wellness classes.
Mm-hmm.
I always kind of taught the traditional wellness, where it's the shape of the pie, and you have the spiritual, the physical, intellectual, emotional, and social. Sometimes you add more depending on your background. But it was always just kind of, we want to balance this all out. And over time, I began to kind of evolve more with that pattern that, the spiritual and the physical really form a base for a triangle. And on top of that, we build our intellectual wellness and then our emotional. And the very pinnacle of it is our social. And it only really recently dawned on me at that very point of the triangle, when we're at the point of the social, is to evolve spiritually toward love, community, unity, and, being together and being for one another, being more self-transcendent as opposed to more selfish. And so it's been this kind of ongoing evolution for me in understanding that. And so I want to kind of dive into those models. And the reason we call it the SPIES model is a friend of mine, we call it the SPIES framework. My friend Jay, a couple years ago, we reconnected since high school. And kind of a long story with that. I mean, Jay was not somebody I was the nicest to in high school. And, when we reconnected, he was like, you're not one of those people that used to, and if he listens to this one, I know he will, he'll give me a hard time. You got to stop telling this story. But, when we reconnected, he was like, "You weren't one of those people that picked on me in high school." And I said, "Well, Jay, it kind of was." But we realized that we were, we had grown from all that. The experiences made me who I am, made him who he is. And without that experience, we wouldn't be Jay and Jeff. And he kind of pointed out to me, he said, are you intentional about the way that you always say those in that order of spiritual, physical, intellectual, emotional, and social? I said, well, I kind of am, because I do think the spiritual is a much more foundational piece. And he's like, because it spells out SPIES. You have a perfect acronym there. And I'm like, I never thought about that. And so now we call it the SPIES framework. And so it, really, again, emphasizing that we can't separate the spiritual and the physical, and we can't get to good relationships if we're not building the rest of those stages along the way. And, we evolved from this newborn infant who is totally dependent on our caregivers for food, for love, for contact, all of it, clothing, everything that we need. But eventually we have to kind of grow out of that. And as we grow into a more mature spiritual individual, we are growing towards somebody who is more other-centered. We do what we need to do for us, but it is for the point of sharing. That love and that outgoing piece. And so I want to kind of go through some of these, how do you personally integrate these dimensions of the SPIES framework? And starting with spiritual, you mentioned being Buddhist. You are a spiritual psychologist, so obviously you have some spiritual practices that you do to help keep yourself centered and to, transcend the self as much as possible. So what are some of your practices?
So I studied spiritual psychology. I'm not a psychologist, so I just have to be careful with that. Okay. It's a really good question, because it's something I do every single day. In fact, I'm getting sick of myself. So I'm going to start doing some more fun stuff, because I don't think it's healthy to only think about that. I don't only think about that, don't get me wrong. But, with the last bout, like with the cancer and everything, it kind of threw me off. It threw me off. And it's okay. It's fine. I get it. My words are judgment, acceptance, impermanence, and peace. And they keep me so grounded, because, and the other one is, I'm not my pain and suffering, even if it's just being tired. And the last of the human freedoms any man can take away from you is how you choose to think. That's ingrained in my head. But judgment, if there wasn't so much judgment in the world, and I sound like probably everybody else that says this, we wouldn't have so much violence and discrimination. And not only do people judge, so in Buddhism we say the first four noble truths is suffering, but when you learn how to think around it, you suffer less. Will you suffer? Of course, we're humans, but you don't suffer as much, right? So judgment, you can sit and watch somebody and say how many times they hate something, or, all the judgments. And I used to be pretty judgmental, actually. I do. I was. I'm not now. I was. I was a human. I'm human. Like everybody else, I was judgmental. No, not now, because I've learned that, how dare I? Who am I to judge someone? Because I don't like what they're wearing, or I don't like what they believe. Who am I? As long as they're not hurting another sentient being. And that's a whole nother conversation, right? But I had to also learn not to judge myself. So I know that when I had some issues, walking meditation, I do that and sitting meditation, but my walking is kinesthetic. I forgive myself for buying into the misbelief. Here's an example, that if someone leaves me, I don't want to live. And I remember, because I judged myself as so weak and not good enough and so desperate, the anxious attachment, that I couldn't handle it. it was just, and it wreaked havoc on my life for many, many years. Now, never. I've been married 19 years, before that 12, and if someone wanted to leave, I'd say, have at it. Never, just, I don't have that problem. That's why I do what I do for a living. It's my chance to help. But I remember walking back and forth because I couldn't get it. So I just kept saying, I forgive myself for buying into the misbelief, for judging myself as not good. And finally, and my whole thing is, I'll say the truth is, and I would walk it until I found the truth. Wait a minute, hold up. I was worthy and deserving by just being born. I am worthy and deserving by just being born. I don't have to do anything to anybody. And then I would add, I'm going to sit in my chair and let them come to me. I don't have to chase anymore, right? So it was all about, if I catch myself judging someone, I will say, Rochelle, I'm upset because my mentor taught me that too. I wanted to smack him. What do you mean? I'm upset because I don't like it. I'm upset because I am judging them, and how dare I? Who am I? You going to practice what you're teaching, or you just, no. So I have to start thinking and unpeel the layers, right? And that gets back to unconditional love. Animals teach us that. They don't care how much we weigh or what we look like. If we're young or have wrinkles on our face, they love us. They're really good teachers, and they're very present. And then there's acceptance. I don't particularly like the acceptance ones. Acceptance is, you sometimes have to accept things just aren't good. And the more you fight it, the worse they're going to get. Carl Jung says, what persist, resist. Or what resist, persist. Yeah, what resists, persists. Sorry about that. And no matter how bad things are, because, we know things can be bad, right? We're not saying we accept it and make it right. We're just saying, well, there's nothing we can do about it. So if we accept it and we don't fight it, then it doesn't hurt as much. If I accept that I have to go to the dentist and I really don't like it, and the fear is actually worse than just going, because 99.9% of the time it's not going to hurt, so I just accept that I'm upset, I don't like it, then I'm not as upset. If we have to accept that we're going through something that's really difficult, that's impossible, the way to make the impossible possible is just to accept it and stop catastrophizing it. That's a really big conversation. And then you're going to feel better, because it's life. And of course, if we're not accepting it, we're judging it. So I have to be careful with that, because I'm not going to say having cancer is good. That's not a judgment. I mean, I guess you could say it is, but who's going to say, oh, it's not right or it's not wrong, it's just cancer? Well, that's true. But being a human, you're not going to like it. But instead of judging it right or wrong, just say, I have to accept I have it. And am I the problem or the solution? What am I going to do? And then, or, a relationship ended, whatever the issue is, and you make the impossible possible. And then there's the word impermanence. Nothing lasts forever. I'm drinking my glass of water. It's going to be empty soon. I'll just go fill it up. Sometimes that's easy to do, sometimes not. But it's impermanence. I know that my pain isn't going to last long, forever, because before I know it, I'll be happy. And I know my happy maybe not last forever, because then I'm going to be upset. So I use that, when I practice that circle, and it always goes back to judgment, then I find peace, and I use the analogy of a seesaw. You're going up and down and up and down and up and down. That's life. But when you sit in the middle of the seesaw, the neutral observer, you find your balance, and then you can look on to everything and say, I can see it, like the sky and the clouds just floating by, and realize that you are the sky. You're not the clouds. You can weather any storm, but you have to choose, how am I going to do it? Even when I thought I was going to die. Oh, I didn't like that, but it was impermanence. I was even going to live or die. Was it easy to practice this? No. It was not. I'm still working on it because now I know, thank you very much, life, I get to go come to terms with this and figure it out. I'm kind of waiting a little bit longer. But it wasn't easy, but okay, then I'm going to accept it isn't easy. And we have to allow ourselves to be miserable for a bit. And if you've done this type of work, which you know takes years to do, but it's so worth it, and there is no end game, you do it for the rest of your life, but then it's easier, judgment, acceptance, impermanence, and peace, to get through something that a lot of people couldn't get through, but you just find that strength and that internal conviction of what you believe, and it doesn't hurt so much. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense. And as I move on into like the physical dimension, you've already kind of underscored how so united the physical and the spiritual are. And sometimes if they're separate, we need to bring them together. And sometimes when they are separate, it's what brings them together is because the physical pulls in the spiritual. So how does the body influence clarity, resilience, or spiritual life in your experience?
Man, that's a question. How does the body influence? You know, to me, the body is a voice. And the voice is saying, I don't feel good. And what I'm gonna ask the body, well, why don't you feel good? And I'm gonna let Gestalt work, right? And I'm gonna let the body tell me why. And then I'm going to accept that. Sometimes I'll just say, well, I don't feel good. And I already know why, because of certain things that have happened to me. So I'm just going to go lay down, and I'm not going to resist and fight that I need to be doing other things, but I need to lay down. I'm going to say, you know what? I guess in this lifetime, I also need to learn, because I never did get to do that most of my life, that it's okay to lay down and do nothing. And that's one of my lessons in this lifetime, is to lay down and do nothing. Doesn't happen very often, but sometimes I don't have a choice. And if I'm not going to do it, my body's going to say, we're going to make you. And until you listen, it's going to keep happening. And then once you listen, it's probably still going to happen. But guess what? And I'm saying that because of my condition. Some people would say, well, you can think it away. Okay, maybe I can, but I'm also somewhat scientific. I have to accept what's happened to me and make it okay. So I'm getting there, but I'm getting better. But my goal will be like, oh, okay, it's time to lay down and just to rest and say to the body, I hear you, I'm listening to you, thank you for your lesson. And the minute I start doing that, I know I'm going to feel better. So the goal is to just do it without having to think about it. You just know, okay, well, I got to lay down, and that's okay. Like when we get older, sometimes we got to lay down. Have we earned the right to lay down? I think so. But I don't think if we've learned our lessons in spiritual psychology, we call them stackers. They're the yuck in life. And until you figure it out, man, they're going to keep coming to where they take you out, or you bottom out, and hopefully you find it doesn't matter how you fall down, it matters how you get up. Winston Churchill said that. That's another one I'll never forget. So the body is the voice trying to say, hey, you got to learn, I need some help here. Or maybe I need to teach you about acceptance and impermanence. And I believe, I know it's a cliche, but the older I get, love conquers all. Even when you love the body, and I'll put my hands over my heart and say, it's okay. I'm speaking to myself like I'm a 3-year-old. During chemotherapy, I did that. I was like, or a dog, an animal in a corner scared to come out. It's okay. Everything's going to be all right. I know it's not fun, but you're going to be okay. Because I'm nurturing the body. I'm nurturing the inner child. I'm nurturing the soul having the human experience. For some reason, decided to have it, to go through it. So what am I supposed to learn?
Like that. And there's so much truth in that, and I love it. So moving on to the intellectual.
Oh boy.
How do we go about cultivating intellectual depth in a distracted world?
How do we go about cultivating intellectual depth?
You didn't know you were signing up for such hard questions, did you?
Yeah, I know. That's one, huh? Go ahead and repeat that one more time. I need to digest it.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, some of these you just got to take some time with. But how do you cultivate intellectual depth in a distracted world?
You know, the first thing that comes to mind, some will, some won't. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. But I do know one thing. We all get to choose another good book, The Choice by Edith Edgar, also a whole Holocaust story. Boy, I really related to that book. I think most of us would. I don't know. She just kept getting up. That was another one. The harder, it doesn't matter how you fall, it matters how you get up. You just keep going. Some of us will choose because it's part of our soul's curriculum to choose. It's just my humble opinion, right? My studies. Some souls having the human experience are never going to choose. They're just going to keep living the way they live. So if someone wants to do this work, something's going to get their attention. You know when they say the student is ready, the teacher will come?
Yes.
The teacher can be anything, even the ocean or the sun will rise and set each and every day to remind you that it's there, the light is there. I think the only way to, you have to embrace it yourself and become a light bearer. And I'm liking the times right now, 2026, because I feel there's a lot of light bearers out there for whatever reason. And people are starting to see whatever they believe in to see, and it's expanding their consciousness. And intellectual, people may think about it and study, depth psychology and all these wonderful things. Or it may just be intuitive, innate, to know that when you go for a walk in the forest, you are forest bathing and you feel good, but they'll never know the science behind it, and they don't need to, as long as they're doing it. So there's different types of intelligence, and some will find it and some won't. But I'll tell you what I do see, though, is that some people will find it, and their love of knowledge continues forever. Like I think you and I are like that. We're going to read and continue. But here's the difference, and I say this to people. There are some people that their glass is half empty, so they have to keep going and 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 find things that are wrong. And that's not life either. Let's look for the good in life, because there's so many wonderful things in life. Oh, the more beauty you see, the more you become it. I learned that with the brain surgery thing. I mean, it's amazing. So what would happen if you stopped trying so hard? You know enough. Instead of reading all these self-help books, why don't you go read, I don't know, something, whatever you want to read, something else, and just go for a walk. That is spirituality. That is also intelligence. Stop running, and your glass has never been empty. It's always been overflowing. You just couldn't see it. And with children, it's different. That's the hard part. Being a child's hard.
Yeah.
Right? They don't necessarily get to. That comes later. But I think intellectual stuff is really, really good. Love it, personally. But I think sometimes you can live so much in that world that you don't come back to the basics. My dad taught me that. Balance. He would teach balance and slow down and be conscious to the here and now. He died. He's very wise. You look like my dad, by the way.
Well,
Yeah, that's funny.
hope that's a thank you.
Yeah, no, do say thank you. My father was great, actually. So was my mom. They're both great. But there's issues everywhere with everybody, right? But in general, they're really great people. My father was intelligent, yes, but he wasn't intellectual. So he just would say, Rochelle, slow down. And I'd say, well, what if it doesn't happen? The internal optimist. My mom was more spiritual. Like the book she's given me, I'm like, how can you, where did you find these books? She's way above all of it. It's insane. So I'm grateful I got both, right? But I think this whole intellectual thing, I see a lot of people that hide behind it. There's another problem. So they can't, it's not authentic. So be present and find balance.
I like it.
And listen to the body.
And I think you've kind of answered my next question, and it really shows how interconnected these dimensions are, because the next question I was going to ask is, where do you see emotional reactivity undermining otherwise intelligent people? And I think you've just kind of said that. I mean, is that not the case?
Yeah, I have.
Yeah.
That's the other thing my dad would say. You try too hard. Stop thinking so much. We all think too much.
Yeah.
And you know what's hard? Is if you haven't done the work, your words are the house in which you live, so be careful. What are you telling yourself? What are you doing? Something you've said many times is, I like that. And I learned when I went to school for hypnotherapy, boy, that was a long school. Whew. Talk about another. Whew. Dr. Kappas would say, I like that. I like that. And he would tell his clients, I like that. And you don't look at something you don't like and say you like it. You just say the words when you wake up in the morning for like 30 seconds. I used to say them throughout the day. I like that. I like that. I like that. I like that. I drive my daughter crazy. But it's so funny. There's a palm tree out there. And here I live in California. I'm not a big palm tree person. I prefer back east, right? I prefer that landscape. Well, out of my window, I look at this palm tree every single day. And you know how at the bottom it gets kind of brown, the leaves? I don't like this palm tree. I kept saying, I like that, I like that, I like that. Or my coffee table, I used to like it perfectly done. Well, I'm looking out the window one day and I see this palm tree and I'm like, oh, I like that. And I named her Felix. Oh, I wrote a whole thing about Felix. And I didn't see the brown leaves anymore. And then, I don't know, a few weeks later, they cut the brown leaves and she was really cute and sassy. Oh, I like that. And then now she's fully grown. Oh, I like that. A palm tree. And then my daughter and I were driving and I saw all these palm trees. And like all of a sudden, I like palm trees. I don't know if I love palm trees, but I like palm trees. And my coffee table, which is far from perfect, I actually like when it's not perfect because it looks like somebody lives here. I'm like, oh, I like that. And what I started realizing is how many times I say I don't like something. Or I used to say I hate something. And now I'm very careful with that word because that word causes war. That's a very bad word. And once in a while I'll say it. My husband will say, Rochelle, what word did you just say? Because it's a habit, right? But I don't say that very often. I really don't like it. When people say it all the time, he'll say, ooh, they have a lot of hate in them. So I love when you said, I like that. You said it many times. And it's just a story because if you say it 30 seconds a day, try to say it all day if you want, doesn't matter. Don't judge time. Let time take its time. Then all of a sudden you're going to like things you never thought you did. So there we're freeing the mind again, right? We're going into a higher realm of consciousness. We're not judging. We're accepting. My palm tree's impermanence. I mean, sometimes she's green, sometimes she has the brown stuff. And peace. So we can apply that to everything in our lives. I like that.
And I want to say I like that too. So
you started it. You started the I like that.
I have to be a lot more aware, not so much of when I do it more reactively, but when can I do it more proactively? And I think that would make the difference, when I start recognizing that, when my wife makes dinner and I say I like that, it means something.
It does mean something.
Need to say I like that more than I say I don't like that, and it has a huge effect on how, and it leads into my next set of questions in regards to the social dimension. It's like, how do we really develop real community? What does a real community require? I mean, obviously it requires us saying once in a while, I like that. But what else does it require to have real community?
I'm thinking about the blue zone.
Okay.
It's a mentality. They're not judging. They're not creating stories. They're accepting that when you're older, they're not going to throw you in a home. They're going to make you a part of society, and they're going to appreciate your wisdom. Boy, speak to older people and see what they have to say. It's amazing. When I have older people that want to work with me, firstly, I can't help it. I wonder why. But I have to be really careful because I want to learn from them. But they're coming to work with me, so I end up sharing the experience because they have so much to learn. I mean, to teach. They're amazing. So it's a sense of community in the Blue Zone. They work together. They help feed each other. They don't alienate you because you don't fit in or you're not good enough. You live, you die. They're not so stuck on the should do this and you would have done that and you could have done that, nonviolent communication. They don't do that. They're not judging. And I think in our society, I don't think I know, if people could be more aware of their words and actions, raise your level of consciousness, David Hawkins' work, was many people's work, right? Be present, Eric Tolle's work, Eckhart Tolle. I think the world would be very different. But sadly, you and I both know that's not going to happen overnight if it does. But here's what I do know. We can create our own little circles, our own little bubbles, and surround ourselves with like-minded people. And when we leave that circle, we have to practice what we teach. We're not going to judge. We're just going to go, and then maybe being the light bearer, if you really walk your talk, somebody's going to pick up on one little thing. Not that we're perfect. None of us are, right? And we're going to pick up maybe something from them too. When you serve others, you are then served. Then maybe things will expand, right? The candle will be passed on and on and on and on and on. And you never know, the bubble could become larger. But I think the Blue Zone is such a good, and I'm not getting into the food and everything, that's a personal preference, but I think we have a lot to learn from these people. And they're usually in, third world countries. They live to be like 103, 105, I don't know, they live for a very long time. And they're in the garden, they're bending up and down, they're exercising. They're part of the civilization. They're not tossed aside like an old sock. Simple things, nothing too complicated. I don't think they're reading and researching and doing all these things. They're just living their nice, simple life.
Yeah. My other podcast, we kind of started on the Aging Well podcast with the premise of there being 4 pillars for aging well. And it came out of me teaching a pathophysiology and exercise class that, if you want to live long and avoid disease, some of the key things to do is exercise, eat a healthy diet, maintain a healthy body composition, and don't smoke. Those were like the 4 biggest things as I taught.
Or
Those
vape.
things, or vape, yeah.
Now what are they?
But those things are going to have really some of the greatest impact. But as we, started exploring more into aging well and having more and more guests on, of course, we added sleep hygiene as a big component of it. And then more and more, this idea of social connection and social engagement kept coming back. And so we started kind of labeling it as purposeful social engagement because you look at the blue zones and you ask anybody in those blue zones, what's your secret to long life? They're not going to tell you their biohacks. They're not going to tell you their set and repetition schemes in the gym or how many miles they're doing or how many steps they got. They're going to, it's all relational. And so we've now added big P purpose as a 7th pillar to that, because having purpose is, to me, probably the most foundational, most important thing that we can do to live longer, because it gives us reason to get up in the morning, gives us reason to live, gives us something to interact with people about. And, our goal is to make the world a better place. The world's going to be a better place. And
light bears.
It's interesting to think of these blue zones and how much time we spend in our society looking at aging as being a negative, looking at it as being something that we have to fight against. You hear about anti-aging. I don't want to anti-age. I want to get older. I'm 63. I'm proud of it. I'm going to hit, my goal. I used to joke, and I got to stop doing it. But I used to joke that I want to go to Brian Johnson's funeral because, Brian Johnson he's not going to die. And now, sadly, he has an immune disorder that could take his life,
Wow.
and it's not something to joke about now, but,
Yeah.
It does underscore the streets. Spend millions of dollars every year to live longer, but where is the cumulative benefit from that? Nobody has really benefited from it. Your existence is what matters the most, not how long you exist. And some of the most impactful people in my life never lived beyond, probably 10 years. I have a couple friends whose sons died of cancer. And, I look at that as like, I learned joy from those kids. I think of my one friend's son, Chris, who died of a brain tumor. And God, you see videos of him and, just pictures of him. The kid was always smiling. It's like,
Where's lesson?
His life was stripped away from him, but he was always so happy. He enjoyed every moment of it.
There you go.
Why can I, who have 63 years, not enjoy those years? And it's more important what are we doing with this life than it is how long we live.
I agree. We believe that when the soul comes into having an human experience, when a child young dies early, that's just, I still don't like it. It's because they come in, they've done their job, and they leave. So you're an example. What did you learn from this child? It's priceless. And then you're going to pass that on to hundreds of thousands of people, and hopefully people listen. And one of the things I learned through all this stuff in my life and my teachings, right? But when you're walking down the street, what would happen if you just walked down the street and really, I drive my daughter nuts again. I'll see a flower on the side of the road. I love flowers. I'm obsessed. And I'll just stand for a few seconds in the middle of everywhere, just looking at the flower because it's so beautiful. Look where she is. Or you hear, like, I'm going for a walk with Juliet and my granddog, a 70-pound German Shepherd mix. Oh, he's such a handful. But I remember walking, and she was ahead of me, and there's the street lamps were just coming on because it was just starting to go into dusk. And we're by the ocean, so you could smell the scent of the ocean air, and it was cool and it was misty. And I'll never forget it. The whole surroundings, I was just quietly watching them, and I could see she and my granddog, and I kind of felt like I was my dad because he used to watch me like that. And my daughter and myself walking, I remember. And I was just so happy to just be walking and feeling the ground beneath me and watching my daughter and my granddog. And I just really noticed the mist and the scent and the street lamps that were kind of foggy because of the mist. And it's being so present. That is life. And people forget that the miracle of the air, our taste, our simple things in life, like you just said, that is life. And people come to me and say, well, I want to know my purpose. And Dr. Frankl teaches will to meaning, right? Could meaning just be learning to appreciate everything around you? And there is nothing else? Do we have to judge it? Is our minds going so fast like a tornado that we can't see what's in front of us? So we have to learn, I call it micro-presence. I could look at anything right now and probably stare at that for the rest of my life and never tell you everything that I see. And I do that sometimes, and I drive my daughter crazy. But she's not, she needs to slow down, and she's 29. She doesn't realize that yet, right? It takes us years. But if society learned how to do that, they're raising their level of consciousness, what would happen? And with that being said, a lot of people have. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. And I need to really work on it a lot better. I mean, there was a few years ago, and we've been in the Pacific Northwest now for, I think it's been here about 18 years. Be 18 years this September. So coming up on 18 years. And I was driving one day and it had just rained. And all of a sudden I just smelled the pine needles as the car tires were kind of driving over them and just wafting that smell. And I was like, oh my God, I never smelled that before. I've never been that attentive to what's going on around me. And it was just, I gotta do this more often. How do I get into this all the time? And of course, over time slipped away from it. And I was in Colorado last summer, almost a year ago, and psilocybin is legal in Colorado. And a good friend of mine invited me to hike up the mountain with her and my now new friend Sam, who went up with us as well, and have a psilocybin experience.
Oh.
And went up, and we talked about it on this podcast a while back, but the three of us went up and we just kind of laid down on the side of this, called it a mountain. It wasn't truly a mountain, especially from Colorado standards, but up on this hill, and just kind of laying there. And at one point, Sam was like, whoa, what was that? And Sandy was just like, oh, no, it's just a hummingbird. And she had forewarned us that the hummingbirds will be aware that you are partaking in the ancestral medicines, and they'll come and visit you. And I was jealous. I mean, I admit I was jealous for a moment that Sam had this experience. Like, I want that. And I said, wait a minute, no, that's Sam's experience. Mine is different.
And that's okay. See, judgment.
Yeah.
Acceptance and impermanence.
I got up to kind of go and use the bathroom, and as I'm walking, I just noticed how bright the colors were. And there was this like dull gray on the ground where it was like all the wood chips and things like that were this grayish color, but the grass was this bright green, bright yellows, bright reds, and just everything kind of opened up. And then a little bit later, we're kind of standing as we're, still kind of under the influence of the medicine, but starting to talk a bit more of our experience. And I'm just looking out over this hillside, and I wear contacts. My contacts do not perfectly correct my vision. They just do a good enough job that I can drive and read and do whatever. But I could see like way out in the distance this house, and I could see everything in detail.
Wow.
And I could see flowers on the adjacent hillside across the valley. And at one point, this doe and her fawn came up just down the hill from me, and I made eye contact with the doe, and it's just like we're looking into each other's eyes. And from that distance, normal vision, I would not see the eyes of the doe that clearly. And it was just like staring into its eyes for a period of time. It seemed like a long time. And then eventually, it started back down the hill, and its fawn was kind of looking at me like it was looking for permission to go follow its mother. And I'm like, you can go. And it just ran off following its mother. But it's like, this is what my wife sees when we go kayaking and hiking. Because when I go hiking and kayaking, I'm like, it's exercise to me. It's like, gotta go, gotta get there as quick as possible, gotta get up the hill, gotta get down the river. And she's always like paddling, like, oh, look at the houses, look at the plants, and I'm like, come on, paddle. And I realized I'm missing out, and I need to let go of some of this stuff and just really kind of be more attuned. And as I'm recording this, my camera is facing away from a window, so I'm facing a window outside, and I can kind of see the leaves on the tree. And ever since then, they're much crisper. They're much more colorful. I mean, certainly not as bright as they were that day, but if I let myself, I can see them in much greater detail. And it was such a lesson to me to just kind of let go and just embrace the experience, because that's what we're here for. We're here to experience. It's not about getting to the end of life or, collecting the most toys along the way. It's that experience. It's what's going on in this moment right now.
So it would be, Gestalt would say, if you were doing Gestalt work, Fritz Perls, what does can't see want to say? And then you would answer those questions. You would have like a chair here and a chair here. So you're sitting here and saying, so I can't see. What do you have to say? And then you'd go into this chair, and can't say would be, well, see, I can't see because and then you're the adult self, right? And then you're asking I can't see questions, and eventually I can't see reveals what the problem is.
I love that.
Right, which is so cool. And then I take that into hypnotherapy at the subconscious level. It's very
so now
cool
I've gone
work.
from I like that to I love that.
Oh, I like that. I love that. That's a good one. I know.
Yeah.
But none of us are ever going to always be that present because we can't. But we can remind ourselves to be present by just walking slowly and feel the ground beneath us, even if it's cement, and watch your breath, and then you can be present. But it's very hard for most people to be present every single solitary second of the day, even a monk, even the Buddha. You're not going to be present every single solitary second of the day. So we have to remember that. And I found that when you're upset about something, like I'll say, okay, I got to go walk outside. I got to go walk. I got to walk and just be present. And I'll walk really slowly and feel my feet on the ground and watch my breath and just slow down and be in a different environment. And you're so lucky because where you live is so beautiful that you're like right out there in healing nature. So, I mean, I can't get any better than that. You're very lucky.
Yeah.
My husband's done a lot of this work, plant medicine, and he spins it in the depth psychological perspective. Mm-hmm. Really interesting.
It's a fascinating thing. I am a huge proponent of it for, its spiritual, psychological benefits, and it's something we need to explore a lot more. And I want to explore a lot more and kind of see what it opens up for me experientially. And it's interesting, you said about, about can't see. I have a saying that I learned from a pastor of mine back on when I lived in New York. He was an old Oklahoma farmer, and his dad always told him, can't never done nothing. I had to clean it up a little bit because my English teacher in high school, Mrs. Moore, would not like me saying can't never done nothing, but can't never did anything. That's but good. Now I was thinking, and now in my head I'm going to have can't never saw anything. So that idea I can't see, why can't you see? You got to open up your eyes and explore and see what you can't see. Mm-hmm. This is great. This is almost therapeutical. I hope you're not going to bill me for this.
Not at all. It's good work. We just have to learn not to drive ourselves crazy and think too much. Isn't it amazing how our parents, our grandparents, the farmer, they know so much.
Yeah. I think we all know so much. We just don't sometimes want to admit it, or we don't realize how much we know until
there's a veil.
We know.
It's a veil of ignorance, right? And when we lift that veil, it's very scary. It can be very scary to see what you haven't seen. But then your lesson could be, I haven't seen that, so now I'm going to. Yeah.
When my wife and I first, when we were approaching marriage, we married late in life. I was I 42 when my son was born? Yeah, because he's going to be 21 this year. So we were like 40 when we started dating. And we went through this program, Harville Hendrix's program on getting the love you want, or something like that. And they would do these different exercises. It was generally from already married couples that needed help. We were looking at it as a preparation for marriage.
Oh, that's smart.
But one of the questions that they asked was, write down all of the negative talk you heard from your parents. And I'm like, I can't come up with any. I don't recall my parents ever saying negative things. If anything, I felt like they were too positive, too optimistic of all that I could do. The only thing that came to mind was, my parents were divorced my freshman year in high school. And my mom, when she would get upset with me, would say, you're just like your father. And I always took it as such a negative for so many years. My dad was a guy, he always was just shy of the brass ring, and did a lot of great things in life, but I never really thought of those things. I just heard in her voice saying, "You're just like your father," which to me was basically, "You're a failure, you're horrible, this and that." And it wasn't until that moment that I realized, wait a minute, no, she was suffering. I mentioned earlier that I saw my dad on the screen here recently, and I realized that I was a mini version of my dad, and
mirror.
She was seeing him in me, and that caused a lot of pain. And I had to let go of that and be very forgiving of all that. But I also looked at, geez, my dad did so many awesome things. Okay, yeah, he wasn't, necessarily successful in all those things by materialistic, terms, but he did some pretty incredible things. Like my dad, he got a tryout with the Pittsburgh Steelers back in the early 60s. I think it was before, maybe late 50s, before I was even born. He never played football in high school or college.
Wow.
Somehow managed to get into their training camp. He did stand-up comedy for some years in their early years of marriage. And, like he used to tell a story of kind of opening for Flip Wilson at the Holiday House in Pittsburgh.
Wow.
And, they're between shows, and, Flip Wilson said, "I want to, show you this routine I'm working on." And he showed him Geraldine, which turned out to be Flip Wilson's, one of his main characters. And my dad was kind of like, "I don't know, a black man do it in drag, I don't think that's going to go over very well." And then he saw it and he said it was hilarious. I, for years, thought that he had tried to talk Flip Wilson out of it. At least that was the story I told. But here, that wasn't quite the story. But, so, I mean, he interacted with those kind of people. And then, he was a management consultant. He wrote some books, nothing that was really, did anything, but he advised, the heads of, big corporations like Ford Motor Company,
Wow.
and, U.S. Steel and all these different companies without a college degree.
Wow.
And, when he retired, his third wife, my stepmom, Margaret, I love her like my own mother. They moved to New York because she got promoted. She was working as the director of the YWCA in Pittsburgh, and they asked her to come and be the COO of YWCA and be in New York for a while. So they moved to New York. He couldn't take his business there with him. He just had to kind of go into retirement, and she was doing really well in that position. They ended up making her the CEO.
Wow.
Like really quickly after that, because they ended up firing the woman who was the CEO for whatever reasons. And so he's there, and I always thought that she convinced him to go do some acting or whatever, because he did a lot of acting when he was younger. But she says otherwise. But it doesn't matter. He decided he was going to just try and get some extra work, and ended up very quickly got his SAG card. Did a lot of extra work on some big shows. You watch Wedding Crashers. He's actually like, there's one scene where, depending on the version you see, he's either the only one on camera or there's him and a woman.
Wow.
He's interacted with all these big stars. And I mean, again, he didn't get that brass ring. He got close. And I do think if they stayed in New York another year, he probably would have had a speaking part on one of the Law and Orders, because they were calling him back all the time. He was a regular extra on Criminal Intent. And, so it's like, they're just wild things. And, how many people have the guts to even try any of that stuff?
A lot of people don't.
We're talking about failure.
Yeah.
The person who has failed the most is the person who's tried the most. You show me the person who hasn't failed, they haven't done much. And that was a huge, huge lesson for me. And it's just like, okay, it doesn't matter how much money I make, how much fame I acquire, having these podcasts. If I affect one person, if only one person sees an episode, and that person's life has changed, I've done great things in
Yeah,
my life.
absolutely. I agree.
And so, but
We
it took
share the
me
same
60 some
story.
odd years.
I
Yeah.
know. We share the same story though. My dad did that, like, don't be like your mom. So I spent my whole life not being like my mom, and had to, like,
Yeah.
and still sometimes I'll think, oh, wait a minute. Oh, wait a minute. Or you look in the mirror. Oh my God, I'm like my mom. I know. It's amazing how that gets into your head. It's an old story.
Yeah.
And here we see that just because somebody doesn't make a lot of money, and it sounds like your father did okay, but
He
because
did well.
they're not like multi-billionaires or hundreds of millions of dollars. So what? I mean, what does that mean? Like, think of some of our very famous healers in the world that are adored and very famous. They don't have a lot of money.
Yeah.
I mean, who cares? I agree with you.
And
But
I think
that's
some of the people
amazing to
that
keep
have the most
going.
money are the worst,
I
least
know.
happy people in the world.
I know. So it's a good story about your dad because it really
Yes.
highlights. He just kept going, and it's the whole judgment thing. And he kept going. And he was a mirror to your mother. No, yeah, to what she didn't like about herself, and then you're the son, so then you became her mirror.
Yeah. So at least I learned all that before they both passed,
That's good.
to accept it all and to be proud of who I am and who they've made me.
Yeah.
Flaws, I mean, I have no fault with my parents whatsoever. You could play a blame game for all the things that your parents did wrong to you or didn't do for you.
No
But
one's
the reality
perfect.
is, I wouldn't be who I am in this moment because of them and every other life that has touched mine. So it's my choice. What do I
Yeah,
do with that next?
I agree 100%. And they sounded like very nice people.
They were. I mean, they had their moments, but
People are human.
like any parents, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's human.
Uh, so, do you believe human life is moving towards something? And if so, what?
Are you talking about human life as a collective consciousness, or just individual?
You can take it either way. And I think, I don't personally think you can really separate the individual and the conscious, or the collective conscious. I think we're all in this together. But, if my life isn't moving towards something, then the collective life isn't necessarily moving towards something. So,
Repeat the question.
so do you believe human life is moving towards something? And if so, what?
It's such a interesting question because I'm sitting here thinking about so many different ways to answer it. I think human life is becoming more evolved between science and spirituality. So we're learning more, studying both platforms, we're learning more. And I think as a whole, the collective consciousness is absorbing all that we're learning. Right? I do.
Right.
And I think people that don't want to learn and people that do is part of the melting pot that makes the human civilization, the consciousness grow, because you can't have one without the other. You can't have the light without the dark. The lotus grows through the mud.
Right.
Right? So that would have to be my answer, because it's a melting pot. And what happens with that? We learn dark versus light. And we all as individuals are going to end up where our souls choose to end up in this lifetime. I truly believe that.
Like that. So I like to end the conversations, and I've had you here almost an hour and a half, and I want to respect your time because you probably want to. It's weekend, we're for both of us, and so we want to be able to enjoy that time and get outside, walk.
You're going to
a little
go
bit
for a
more.
walk for me and say
I
hello
will.
from
I'm going to
Rochelle.
walk the dog, and I'm going to
So nice.
just kind of pay attention to what's going on around me. So, but I like to end the conversation with the same question. If somebody listening right now feels scattered or fragmented, what is one step they can do this week to begin becoming more centered?
Walk and breathe. Feel your feet on the floor, or if you're lucky, in the forest like where you are. Even if you're in the middle of New York, Mother Earth is beneath something. And walk and really pay attention to your feet on the ground. Are they in shoes? Are they barefoot? You don't necessarily have to be barefoot. Whatever you want to do. But feel your feet on the surface of something and walk very slowly and pay attention to it and watch your breath. Because then you're going to be present to the here and now. And when you are calm, you will be more clear. The tornado will settle.
I like it.
I like that too, see?
Yeah. I usually like to kind of end this podcast on just the words of wisdoms of my guest, and I feel like that's a good place to end. But I haven't asked you yet about your book, how people can kind of connect with you. We didn't even bring up the title of the book is Joymind, correct?
It's The Soul's Coach, 7 Paths to Healing Your Relationship.
What's Joymind then? Is that your...
Joymind is... I'm one of the founders, Joymind.com. It's a hypnotherapy, and we're the largest. There's 3 of us, and it's the largest platform in the country. And we decided to do this, we 3 partners, is because we wanted to spread out healing to the world, to the masses. And I am so incredibly grateful that we have been able to accomplish it and that we're going to continue to reach more tender souls out there. And you can just go to joymind.com and everything you need to know how to find us, what to do is out there. It's a really, and you know what I love? Everyone that works for this company, we have many, many people. Every single one of them are kind and loving and selfless and truly care. And I can really say that because I know if they're not going to work with us. And it's so nice to have that consciousness in this company. We're very protective of it. It's a nice thing. But it has to get to the subconscious. So everything we've spoken about all needs to be understood at the subconscious level, which rules your life, or you're going to keep doing it.
Yeah. So where can they find the book? Is that available at their website
Amazon
as well? Or
you can
Amazon?
go to Amazon. If you just type in Rochelle L. Cook, you can find me, or the Soul's Coach to the The Soul's Coach, 7 Paths to Healing Your Relationship. I know it's a long title.
I know, you get those long titles. It's really hard
I know,
to
just
remember.
Rochelle L. Cook is easy.
Yeah. Well, I'll put links to all that, of course,
Thank
in
you.
the description notes, just because
Thank you.
I think it's important for people to kind of connect with you. I really love this conversation.
Yeah, me too. Thank you.
It's been a great, all these conversations I have on this podcast are just such a great opportunity, whether it's just me and this person having a conversation and nobody hears it.
It's a nice conversation.
Yeah.
I've learned too. I love it. I love you used to teach. I think that's very cool.
Yeah.
Very,
I
very
love
cool.
teaching. It's fun.
Yeah,
So,
you'd be good at it because you understand what you're saying. I think it's great.
my students might think otherwise, but
Yeah, just have them call me. It's okay.
okay.
All
Well, you just keep doing what you're doing and keep helping people.
I'm trying.
Keep living well. I wish you the best.
Thank you. Very,
don't get
very
sick
much.
anymore. We don't need you to get sick anymore.
Not
Just
happening.
Stay
Oh, it's not
strong,
happening.
Be well.
I know.
And, just we'll have to have you back. I love having kind of repeat conversations with people too. So maybe
Thank you. I would
down
love
the
that.
road, we'll have you back.
I'm here. And please, hug a tree and kiss that dog.
I will.
Oh,
Or I kiss a tree and hug the dog. I like
you can do whichever one you want, but I want something. And the dogs know my name. If you say, "Oh, Rochelle said to give you a kiss," the dog will know. I mean, they just know.
My
I love
dog will
animals.
kiss me. Our dog, we have a red border collie.
Oh,
that
they're so
just-
smart.
She just loves to give hugs. I mean, and I'm not big on dogs getting on the couch. And we had labs for the longest time, and then we decided to get this border collie. And she's just the right weight that she can get up on your lap and everything. But
Really
she
belong.
loves to jump up on you, and you just say, like, Rowena, give me hugs. And she'll jump up, and she literally kind of just hugs you and cuddles up to you.
They're family too.
And yes, she's just such a sweetheart. So
So sweet. I love animals. I need a petting farm one day. I don't know if I'm going to get it, but a micro farm would be nice. You'd never see me. I'd just be out with the animals.
there you go.
Nice to meet you. It was very, very nice to meet you. And
too.
thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
It's been my pleasure.
We'll speak to
And
you soon.
Thank you for listening to Centered. Please like, follow, and share with someone who could benefit. And if you'd like to support the show financially, you'll find a tip jar in the show notes.